Since we are gathering to celebrate our opera festival, it's a good time to look at what the opera meant to Paris in the Belle Époque and what Paris meant to the world. When did the French capital become Gay Paris? By the time we meet the Parisians and their pleasures of the 1880s and 1890s, France has survived a terrible revolution, Napoleon's reign, uprisings in 1830 and 48, and the Franco-Prussian War and the Commune. But she is not defeated. The Grand Exposition of 1889 is deliberately set to commemorate the centennial of the storming of the Bastille, and Paris never stopped celebrating until World War I. After the war, soldiers who came home from the battlefields subbed into Paris for a little R&R, and they brought tales of its magical lure and could hardly wait to go back. Thomas Carlyle called Paris the Vanity Fair of the world, and Walter Benjamin called it the capital of the 19th century. Oscar Wilde said that when good Americans died, they went to Paris. Gaslight and electricity had made the city safe and exciting, and tourists came for the elegant urban culture and for the shopping and the excitement of moving among the passions of other people. Paris was living theater. In the 17th century, Paris was little more than the area around the Ile de la Cité. There is Notre Dame, and at the lower edge along the river is the Royal Palace, the Louvre, Louis XIV's government headquarters, and his royal residence. But Louis preferred to stay at Versailles, his favorite hunting lodge outside Paris. This is just a model, but look to the left, and what's the ramp for? That's so the horses can get to the banqueting hall. This was a rustic lodge, and Louis was entirely content with it until he was invited by his finance minister, Nicolas Fouquet, to visit his new chateau, Vaux-le-Vicomte. Vaux was a revelation to Louis. Instead of hunting trophies and fireplaces for roasting oxen, the decor was sculpted, painted, and gilded, and featured Fouquet's motif, the squirrel. It was not long before Fouquet was imprisoned for financial malfeasance, and Louis had taken over architect Lavaux, decorator Lebrun, and landscaper Lenotre to begin creating the Versailles we know today. Louis moved his government to Versailles, and as he became the Sun King, he offered apartments at court to all his nobles, so they too abandoned their Paris homes. Ultimately, Versailles was home to 7,000 souls, leaving Paris a picturesque and disorderly collection of neighborhoods. In 1850, Paris emerges from misfortune. Louis Napoleon, the emperor's nephew, creates the Second Empire. Now, Paris finds itself totally behind in city planning. Central London has been redesigned by Nash. Berlin is renewed for Frederick the Great. Vienna has a Ringstrasse, and Washington, D.C. has been laid out by a Frenchman with the innovation of diagonal boulevards connecting neighborhoods. Louis Napoleon recruits Baron Haussmann to oversee a revival and redesign of the city. On the map, dark lines indicate new boulevards, along which are built spacious apartment buildings. The shaded areas are new arrondissements outside the old city walls, doubling its size. The medium tint indicates open spaces, parks, and the Bois de Boulogne is at the western edge of the city. Haussmann did spare the neighborhoods to the east, with the Jewish Quarter, the Place des Vosges, and fine 16th and 17th century private mansions. One of them, the Carnavile, is the museum of the city of Paris. But to the west, he built ranks and ranks of 5- and 6-story apartment buildings with modern plumbing connected to a new city sewer system. There were servants' quarters under the roofs and balconies and trees. Haussmann edged his new avenues with chestnut trees and ginkgos, and Caillebotte paints this ginkgo in early spring so we can see underneath to the ornamental grate which protects the tree and lets the rain in. Haussmann has also allowed for sidewalks wide enough for benches. Pissarro's Boulevard des Italiens is around the corner from the Opéra. The boulevards have shops on the ground floor and businesses and apartments above. On the right would have been Nadar's photo studio, where the first Impressionist exhibition was held. Note the lighting down the middle of the street, leaving the shop lights to illuminate the sidewalks. The Champs-Élysées is such a broad boulevard, it needs lights on either side, and there are wide sidewalks for strolling. And for weary pedestrians, there's a double-decker omnibus. This is a true Paris sky. And this is another Paris sky. This painting was used to advertise modern 19th century umbrellas. A cane, which at the touch of a button turned into an umbrella. In the 18th century, an umbrella was a sure sign of someone who did not have his own carriage. Then, chic Paris shops rented umbrellas, distinguished by their green color and numbered so they could be tracked. By 1848, Paris had 377 shops employing 1,400 workers, all making elegant modern umbrellas. This painting illustrates the severity and the sterility of Haussmannization. Streets coming from all directions, no awnings, no balconies, no trees, no benches. A reminder that it could be exhausting to live in a construction site, like being in a constant earthquake. And a deep melancholy lurked behind the modern facade. Many sensitive souls felt the panic and the emptiness. The old opera house, Opera Le Pelletier, had been an all-purpose building, a theater, an auditorium, and a ballroom. It had offered the first performances of several of Verdi and Rossini's operas. It was destroyed not by Haussmann, but by fire, though not before. It had been the scene of an attempt to assassinate Louis Napoleon as he was leaving his carriage for a performance. Visionary young architect Charles Garnier had already been hired to design a new palace of opera, one with a separate and more secure entrance for dignitaries. But there were many delays, one caused by the discovery of an underground stream, something we here in Princeton know well from the construction of this library. But the greater interruption would be war, the Franco-Prussian War. Prussia, under Bismarck, was hungry for French territory, and Louis Napoleon, misjudging French military power, went to war in 1870. Soon, the French were overwhelmed and asking for an armistice, giving up their provinces, Alsace and Lorraine. Bismarck demanded steep reparations, but agreed not to occupy Paris. He didn't want the responsibility. The city was in a desperate condition, blockaded throughout the war. Its citizens were starving. American Minister Elihu Washburn had remained at his post and established good relations with Bismarck, so he was able to get exit visas for many nationalities. When the gas supply gave out, the people burned the trees. There was an epidemic of smallpox. Typhoid was rampant. Theaters and department stores became hospitals. When the Comédie Française bravely reopened, the actors wanted to be paid in food. We have Washburn's account of the war and the Commune which followed, when Paris, under the French National Guard, rejected the peace treaty with Germany. The Paris Commune established itself in Montmartre, one of Haussmann's new arrondissements, whose mayor was Georges Clemenceau. Montmartre translates to Hill of Martyrs. The abbey has been there since medieval times as a center for the villages of stone quarries and vineyards. Saint Denis, the patron of Paris, is buried there, and this is where Ignatius Loyola and Francis Xavier started the Jesuit order. Montmartre also had a wilder side. Its hilly and confusing terrain provided smuggling routes to avoid the toll gate, so the community attracted smugglers and brigands and vagabonds and runaways. These Victor Hugo sorts of characters, plus the vineyard taverns, had long attracted Versailles nobles and aristocrats escaping the formality of court. Henry IV, Le Vert Galant, led the way in the 17th century when his favorite tavern was the Drop of Gold. During the war, Paris had been defended by the National Guard, largely made up of working-class radicals who were happy to form a socialist government. Marx and Engels would describe the Commune as the first example of a dictatorship of the proletariat. The Commune determined upon equal rights for women, abolishing child labor, remitting rents, and encouraging employees to take over abandoned businesses. All very well, but Paris was still blockaded and starving. And the Commune was at war with the Versailles government. Montgolfiers were the only way into or out of the city. Food was in such short supply that soldiers kept order at government-run shops. The French, so accustomed to shopping daily for fresh foods, came to appreciate the American canned goods stocked by grocers in neighborhoods favored by expatriates and tourists. The U.S. ministry was well supplied, and Washburn fed as many as he could. Sometimes there would be more than 100 refugees living in the ministry. National troops from Versailles broke through the barricades and burned the city halls in the arrondissement and the Tuileries. Louis Napoleon and his family fled to England and the protection of Queen Victoria. Elihu Washburn called Paris a shipwreck, saying, "The vandalism of the Dark Ages pales before the monstrous crimes perpetrated in this great center of civilization." Manet, who had spent the war with his family at the seashore, came back during the Commune and recorded the street fighting where paving stones were turned into barricades. Degas had remained in Paris and joined the National Guard. He did this, Woman at the Window, as a reminder of how much wartime is spent just waiting. Years later, Degas' dealer told the buyer of this painting that Degas had paid the model with horsemeat. By the end of May 1871, it was all over. The Paris Commune was subdued and brought into the Third Empire. And this spring is the 150th anniversary of those days. Almost unbelievably quickly, Paris was back in business. Cook's Tours of London was offering special tours to see the ruins. Work resumed on Garnier's Palace for the Opera. Charles Garnier had thought of everything. At the lowest level is a circular carriage route, so patrons and their finery are protected from any misadventure. Pedestrians enter on the second level. Everyone experiences the splendor of the grand staircase. The opera house seats 2,000, and there are concert rooms above. And look how much space is devoted to the stage and the mechanics for elaborate scenery. It can produce any effect, even a sea monster lurching up from the back of the stage. Behind the stage is the foyer of the dance, where the corps de ballet entertain during intermission. The grand staircase sets the mood. Not only does every seat have a view of the stage, every patron is able to see everyone else in the house. Here is a devotee. Her eyes are on the stage. From her costume, this must be a matinee. Note that she has a fan, but it's closed. Always give a second look at fan. How it is held indicates what it's signaling. There's a language of fans, evolved since fans came into use in the 17th century. Casanova said, "Women are armed with fans as men with swords, and sometimes do more execution." The fan held against the right cheek indicates yes. Madame's fan is resting in her left hand. Maybe she has made her arrangements while Monsieur is scanning the house. One young woman holds the fan in her right hand in front of her face. Is she signaling, "Follow me"? Or do we read the fan as opened wide, indicating, "Wait for me"? Another meaning for the wide open fan is, "I am single." The other young woman has no fan, and she seems content with her flowers, maybe from a fiancé. She's looking at someone, and the fan is wide open under her chin. This young woman would seem to have come to the opera with an older gentleman, but at intermission, she has caught the attention of someone else. Carrying the fan in the left hand, open, means, "Come talk to me." On stage, the obligatory ballet. At the heart of the world of opera is the world of ballet. The convention was that there must be a ballet in every opera, to the great displeasure of Wagner when he introduced Tannhäuser to Paris. And the ballet must be in Act 2, because the ballet is for the special pleasure of members of the Jockey Club, and the club dines late at the Café de la Paix. The art of ballet began at the courts of Renaissance Florence, so Medici princes sent troops to the French court, and France sent it on to Russia. Russia would cherish the ballet, reanimate it, and send it back to Paris with Diaghilev and the Ballet Russe. By the mid-19th century, the Paris Ballet was under state sponsorship and strict protocols and examinations. Any Parisian, bourgeois, or working-class family with a dancing daughter would pray for her to be accepted into the opera's school of ballet. The ultimate rewards could be as generous as the training was harsh. Aspiring ballerinas tried out at age 6 or 7, and here is a young hopeful and her mother. They wait outside the examination room. If accepted, they trained for another 7 years, known as rats, scrawny, always hungry, and obliged to skitter out of the way of their betters. A rat lived on hope. Mama is still chaperoning. How do we know so much? Edgar Degas' social position opened doors everywhere. His friendship in the arts and the government gave him entree to the world of the opera house. He could observe the ballet school as rats turned 14 and could take the exam to be selected for the corps de ballet. Then they could train for another 2 years and hope to become stars. Once a member of the elect, They would be permitted to spend intermission in the foyer of the opera, meeting and entertaining admirers who might become protectors. Notice that some of the girls have gold necklaces instead of black ribbons, and some have gold bracelets, slave bracelets they called them. Intermission in the foyer. Gentlemen with visiting privileges to the foyer were opera subscribers, noblemen, high society, professional men, government officials, all gentlemen of means and taste. Degas illustrated a novel by his friend Ludovic Hollevet about a family with two daughters in the corps de ballet, Virginie and Pauline Cardinal. Here, Mama Cardinal, still the vigilant chaperone, interviews an admirer. In the novel, Virginie marries a Florentine nobleman, but then elopes with the baritone. Pauline succeeds as a grande cocotte. Well, if not the opera, how else to spend an evening on the town? Visitors to Paris delighted in the variety of nightlife, and they marveled at how the classes of society mingled together. Masked balls were popular because one could go without a partner. Admission was charged, 20 francs for men, 10 for women, but worth it to hear Strauss and Offenbach lead their orchestras in their new waltzes. Held Saturday evenings from December until Mardi Gras, the balls began at midnight and ended at 5 a.m., just in time to go to Les Halles for onion soup with the market workers. The Comédie Française. It was founded in 1680 by Louis XIV, and the company performed only classic French dramas, Racine, Molière, Corneille. Then, as now, they were in their own bijou theater in Palais Royal. Pantomime. There was a theater dedicated to the old tradition of pantomime. The Funambule Theater was in a slightly shady part of town. The 1945 film Les Enfants du Paradis by Marcel Camus is about this theater and stars Jean-Louis Barrault as the Pierrot mime. It tells a true story about the theater and its troupe of actors in the 1840s. Manet paints his friend, Shakespearean actor Philibert Rovière, as Hamlet. The French have a love affair with Shakespeare, so different from their own classic drama with its strict unities and its spare vocabulary. When Voltaire went to England, he reported that Shakespeare was contrary to good taste, but sublime. All along the Champs-Élysées were café-concerts, much like our nightclubs, with music, songs often satirical, and stand-up comedy. There would be a featured artiste. Here it's Degas' Teresa Valdon, famous for her Song of the Dog. The guidebooks suggested that only visitors with good French would enjoy these dives. You can imagine Degas and Mary Cassatt escorting Mary's friend Louisine Havemeyer to a café concert. Mrs. Havemeyer later bought this painting, but she said that there was nothing elegant about the song or the performance. The greenish hue is limelight, actual dishes of chemical lime burning at the foot of the stage to illuminate the performers' faces. In daytime, too, Paris was an adventure for those tired of formal entertainment like museums. Paris is a patchwork of parks with chairs to rent and entertainment, music, sidewalk artists, fortune tellers, Punch and Judy shows. Manet includes himself on the left, the blonde-bearded man looking at us. Or just walking around Paris was its own adventure. In the 1880s, strollers in the 17th arrondissement would come across this site. A foundry was borrowing the public square to assemble the Statue of Liberty. How did this gift from France to America come to be? It began at a dinner party in spring of 1865 in a chateau near Versailles. Edward de la Boulaye, a French scholar who had written a history of the United States and who was president of the French Anti-Slavery Society, La Boulaye was entertaining Hippolyte de Tocqueville, brother of Alexis, and two grandsons of General Lafayette. Another guest was Frederick Bartholdi, a young French sculptor just back from a disappointing trip to Egypt. All were devoted to the American cause, and they wanted to celebrate the North's victory and to mourn Lincoln. A statue of some sort. Bartholdi had been to Egypt in hopes of a commission for a statue to commemorate the opening of the Suez Canal. Bartholdi had proposed a statue of the Khedive of Egypt holding up a lamp, Egypt carrying the light to Asia. But after the expenses of the canal, the Khedive was out of funds. The concept was remodeled to be a female figure. Some say Bartholdi used the features of his own mother, to whom he was exceedingly devoted. The United States government accepted the offer and agreed to provide the setting for the statue. But where? Bartholdi went to America to consult, and as his ship sailed into New York Harbor, he found his location on a small island with the remains of fortifications from the War of 1812. An enormous project in all ways. The statue is 151 feet tall, and the base nearly as high. Fundraising on both sides was slow. Liberty's head, or the arm bearing the torch, made appearances at various fairs and expos to promote donations. And Joseph Pulitzer's paper, The New York World, suggested that school children contribute their pennies. Here, Bartholdi is inspecting the mold. The cast statue will be thin copper, made in many pieces to be shipped across the ocean and riveted together. Much thought was given how to hold the statue together and upright. Maybe fill it with concrete? Gustave Eiffel arrived with a better plan, a flexible metal skeleton with a staircase to let visitors climb to the crown. Visitors to Paris expected to dine superbly, and even now we can create the Belle Époque experience. Two restaurants, which have preserved their 19th century decor, are Le Trembleur in the Gare de Lyon and the Grand Véfour in Palais Royal. Shopping. French fashion may have been refined in the salons of Versailles, but it became big business in Paris. Worth was the first of the fashion houses to attract an international clientele, and there were avenues of modistes and side streets of boutiques offering exquisite accessories. And there was always the pleasure of window shopping. Neighborhoods with hotels had arcades, covered passages, housing specialty shops of luxury goods, and in dry comfort, early shopping malls. Le Bon Marché, opened in 1852, was the first modern department store. Everything under one roof at a good price. Innovations included a reading room for husbands, entertainment for children, catalogs, advertising, specials, and sale days. The upper floors were dormitories for unmarried staff. Note the open work construction, the large windows, and the skylights, and the two nuns enjoying an outing. But the greatest tourist attraction was the 1889 International Exposition, marking a century since the Bastille and the Revolution. With delegations and displays from all over the world, it was education as well as entertainment. Open from May through October, it attracted 32 million visitors, and Paris has never again seen such tourist traffic. As a bonus, visitors could go on to Neuilly, where Buffalo Bill and Annie Oakley are offering their Wild West show. It was easy to spend a day outside Paris. Railroad terminals were the cathedrals of the 19th century, offering rail connections in all directions. London was 10 hours away with no passport required. The Gare Saint-Lazare offered commuter service, 45 minutes to Argenteuil and Giverny. Visitors wanting a respite from the pace of Paris had their choice. A Parisian blacksmith had invented the velocipede, a wooden frame with metal wheels and self-propelled. It was a bone-shaking experience. Later, when balloon tires and chain drive had been added, women were willing to join in the sport, and the slogan became, "The chains that set women free." Any questionable or downright unsuitable assignation was better arranged for out of town. The race course at Longchamp is still exciting in our time. The Grand Jatte is an island in the Seine just beyond the city limits. In royal times, Louis Philippe had made it into a playground for his 10 children. And Louis Napoleon and Baron Haussmann turned it into a public amusement park, offering active and passive entertainments. It was also a favorite haunt of late 19th century artists. Further up the Seine was La Grenouille, the frog pond, a floating restaurant with musical entertainment, boat hire, and swimming. Public bathing was new. This is still when bathing machines are a feature at the seaside in Deauville and Trouville. It was here that Monet and Renoir, painting side by side, invented Impressionism. Renoir said, "One day, someone ran out of black and used blue." Impressionism was born. Outdoor dance halls. Bring the whole family. Stay all day, play cards, have a picnic, meet up with old friends. Renoir shows us the joy of the moment. The Seine was alive with boats. There were clubs which had formal meets, or whoever did not own a boat could hire one, rent it one place, leave it another, stopping somewhere for a long luncheon with friends. It's possible still to recreate Renoir's Luncheon of the Boating Party. The Maison Farnèse is still in business at Château on the Seine. A fan can be useful on a river cruise, too. The couple walking in the Luxembourg Gardens at twilight may have spent the day out of the city and be considering an informal evening on the town. Nothing so heavy as the opera. There's the circus. Le Cirque d'Hiver performs all year round in its own 20-sided building. There's one ring with everything happening, and no one is very far from the action. We've missed the pretty girls on elephants, the dancing bears, the boxing kangaroos, and the magician. The guidebook recommends the circus as a good place to rest after walking miles at the expo. Francesca and Angelique Wartenberg are acrobats and jugglers in the circus. The oranges are tribute from admirers. Some still have their tissue paper wrappers. Now the girls will juggle them and toss some back to the audience. A fan can be useful here to catch the attention of a new arrival. No trip to Paris is complete without a visit to the Folies Bergère. Part circus. Look at the little green boots of the trapeze artiste in the upper left. Part vaudeville, part dance hall, even a tidied-up can-can. The Follies sum up gay Paris. And Manet's barmaid echoes the melancholy of all the workers who make the city's entertainment possible. Another suggestion for an evening on the town might be a visit to Montmartre, much reformed since Commune days, now a neighborhood of artists and cabarets. The Moulin Rouge was never really a mill. It opened just in time for the centennial. This is a postcard a visitor might have sent home. The best thing the owner ever did was hire Toulouse-Lautrec to do the advertising. Lautrec rethinks the poster. He makes it twice the usual size, edits the words, letting his images speak. He pushes the limits of lithography to make eye-catching designs and colors. We can still have them all. The Opera Garnier, the Circus, Longchamp, Maison Fournaise, the Moulin Rouge, the Folies Bergère, and something else, the Opera Bastille.